The Empire ruled the stars. For 3,000 years they had crushed every species that stood in their way. Their ships were massive. Their weapons could destroy planets. Their soldiers were trained from birth to conquer and kill. No one had ever defeated them. No one had even come close. When their scout ships found Earth, the commanders barely paid attention. The reports showed a small blue planet in an unimportant corner of the galaxy. The creatures living there had just learned to leave their world. Their fastest ships moved like crawling insects compared to vessels. Their weapons were primitive tubes that shot metal using explosions. They had no shields, no plasma cannons, no quantum drives. Command Overseer read the report in his chamber aboard the capital ship. He was old by standards, with scales that had turned from green to gray over his 200 years of service. He had personally overseen the conquest of 42 worlds. This one seemed easier than most. "Another primitive species," he said to his assistant. "Why do they waste my time with these reports?" "Protocol, Overseer," the assistant replied. "All discovered worlds must be classified." Mark the file with a single command, Standard Purge Protocol. That meant a fleet would be sent. The primitive creatures would be given one chance to surrender. When they refused, as they always did, they would be eliminated. Their world would be harvested for resources. It was simple. It was efficient. It was how they had built their empire. The Galactic Council met in the Great Hall of the mothership. Hundreds of officers gathered to discuss the expansion plans. Earth was item number 47 on the agenda, discussed for less than 3 minutes. "How many ships?" one council member asked. 300 warships, 50,000 warriors, another replied. "Standard overwhelming force doctrine." "Seems excessive for primitives," someone noted. "Better to use too much force than too little," the War Master said. "We maintain our reputation through absolute victory." The council agreed. Commander was assigned to lead the fleet. He was a hero among the 73 worlds had fallen before him. His tactics were studied in every military academy. His name made enemies surrender before the first shot was fired. Stood before the council and bowed. "I will bring glory to the Empire," he said. "How long should the conquest take?" 2 weeks at most, the War Master answered. "Probably less." Accepted the command. As he left the hall, his second-in-command walked beside him, was younger, with bright green scales and eager eyes. He had only conquered 12 worlds but showed great promise. "Commander, is 300 ships not too many?" asked. "The primitives have nothing that can threaten us." "The council has decided," replied. "We follow orders. Perhaps it will be a quick campaign and we can return home early." Neither of them knew that Earth had been preparing. Neither of them knew that humans had been watching. Far below, on the surface of Earth, inside a mountain in a place called Colorado, Colonel stood in a dark room filled with screens. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had not slept properly in 3 months. Around him, dozens of people worked at computers, monitoring signals from deep space. "Sir, the alien fleet is assembling," a young officer reported. "Our telescopes confirm 300 large vessels. We estimate departure in 48 hours." Nodded slowly. He had known this day would come. 5 years ago, Earth's deep space monitoring system had detected the Empire. At first, they thought it was a mistake. Then they intercepted the transmissions. They decoded the language. They watched as the destroyed world after world. Humanity had seen the recordings. They watched as the burned cities from orbit. They saw entire populations enslaved or executed. They heard the screams in languages Earth's computers could not translate. And they understood one simple truth. If the found Earth, humanity would be next. So Earth prepared. Every nation put aside their differences. Every resource was directed to one goal, survival. They built weapons in secret. They reinforced bunkers deep underground. They launched satellites with hidden purposes. They trained soldiers for a war they hoped would never come. But hope was not a strategy. Dr. Park entered the command room. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been a physics professor before they were discovered. Now she led Earth's weapons development program. She carried a tablet filled with data. "Colonel, we need to review the final preparations," she said. Followed her to a side room. Inside, a map of Earth hung on the wall, covered in red marks and blue symbols. Each red mark showed a place where ships might land. Each blue symbol represented a human defensive position. "The lunar charges are set," reported. "All 23 installations are rigged to explode on your command. The satellites are in position. The kinetic defense grid is online. Ground forces are hidden and ready." "And if none of it works?" asked. Meta's eyes. "Then we die, but we die fighting. We make them pay for every inch of ground. We make them remember that humanity does not surrender." Felt something cold settle in his chest. He thought of his daughter, evacuated to a bunker in Australia. He thought of the millions of people depending on the decisions he would make in the coming days. "They think we are primitives," he said quietly. "They think this will be easy." "Good," replied. "Let them think that. Let them be confident. Confident enemies make mistakes." Across the planet, other preparations were being made. Major drilled his soldiers in the ruins of an abandoned city. They practiced moving silently. They practiced hiding. They practiced killing in close quarters. Had been a special forces operator before the world changed. Now he commanded 5,000 soldiers who would never see a parade or receive a medal. They would fight in shadows and die in silence. Lieutenant Bora worked in a facility beneath the ocean. She monitored the tracking systems that watched every object in Earth's orbit. She had not seen the sun in 4 months. She did not complain. Everyone had sacrificed. Everyone understood what was coming. Captain Hand sat in a bomber that would never fly again. Its engines had been removed and replaced with computers. It was now a command center hidden in plain sight. He watched his screens and waited. Around the world, millions of soldiers, scientists, and ordinary people waited. They had practiced their roles. They had said goodbye to loved ones. They had made peace with the possibility of death. The fleet would arrive in 3 weeks. They expected an easy victory. They expected glory and quick conquest. They expected primitives who would break and run. They were about to learn that humanity had spent its entire existence fighting each other, fighting nature, fighting to survive against impossible odds, and now they would fight together for the first time in their history. In the darkness of space, the fleet began its journey toward Earth. Commander stood on his command deck and looked at the star charts. He saw the small yellow sun where the primitive world waited. "Set course," he ordered. "Maximum speed, let us end this quickly." Behind him smiled. "To glory, Commander." "To glory," agreed. Neither of them noticed the small object drifting past their ship. It looked like debris. It was actually a probe launched from Earth years ago. It watched them pass. It recorded everything. It transmitted data back home. The hunters did not know they were being hunted. The conquerors did not know they were heading into a trap. The warriors did not know that their finest hour would be their last. The war for Earth was about to begin. The fleet arrived at Mars like a storm of metal and death. 300 ships appeared in the darkness, their hulls gleaming under the distant sun. They moved in perfect formation, a display of power meant to terrify any who saw it. Commander stood on his command deck and watched the small blue planet ahead. It looked peaceful from this distance. Fragile. He activated the communication system and broadcast his message in 17 different languages, all stolen from species that had conquered before. "Primitive inhabitants of the third planet, you will surrender immediately. You will open your military facilities. You will prepare for processing. Resistance will result in complete extermination. You have 6 of your hours to comply." Waited for the response. Usually the primitives sent panicked messages. Sometimes they begged. Sometimes they tried to negotiate. It was always pathetic and it always ended the same way. But from Earth there was only silence. Stood beside his commander, confused. "Sir, they should have responded by now. All our messages are being received. Their satellites are still functioning." "Perhaps they are too frightened to respond," suggested, "or too stupid to understand the danger they face." "Should we wait longer?" "No," decided. "Send 20 ships to their moon. Establish a forward base. We will use it to coordinate the planetary assault." 20 warships broke from the main fleet and moved toward Earth's moon. They landed near the largest human installations, massive structures that had been built over decades. The warriors exited their ships in full battle armor, weapons ready. But the installations were empty. Doors hung open. Equipment had been removed. It looked like the humans had abandoned everything and run away. The captain leading the ground forces reported back to, "Commander, there is no one here. The facilities are empty." "Cowards," said with disgust. "They ran to their planet to hide. Fine, we will dig them out." The warriors began securing the moon base, setting up their equipment and preparing landing zones for more ships. They felt confident, victorious already. Deep underground on Earth, inside his command center, Colonel watched every movement through hidden cameras that they had not found. His hand rested on a control panel. Beside him, Dr. Park monitored the positions of all 20 enemy ships. "They are all in the kill zone," she said quietly. Looked at the faces of his staff. Young people, old people, soldiers and scientists, all of them watching him, waiting for the order that would start a war humanity might not survive. He pressed the button. On the moon, the warriors heard a sound like thunder, but there was no air on the moon to carry thunder. The sound came through their feet, through the ground itself. The human installations exploded from within. Thousands of charges, planted months ago and hidden in the walls and floors, detonated simultaneously. The explosions ripped through the lunar surface. 16 ships were caught in the blasts, their hulls torn open by flying debris and the force of the explosions. Warriors died instantly, their armor crushed or torn apart. The 4 remaining ships tried to escape, their engines screaming as they lifted away from the chaos. On his command deck, watched in disbelief as 16 of his ships vanished from his screens. Gone, destroyed by primitives. "How," he whispered, "how is this possible?" Was already working at his console. "Commander, they rigged their own installations to explode. It was a trap. They let us land and then—" "I understand what happened," roared. "Recall all ships, prepare for full planetary assault." But was angry now, angry and careless. He wanted revenge for the warriors he had lost. He wanted to punish the primitives for their trick. He ordered 100 ships to descend to Earth immediately to attack the largest cities all at once. It would be overwhelming. It would be unstoppable. The ships entered Earth's atmosphere like meteors, burning through the air toward their targets. The warriors inside prepared their weapons. They checked their armor. They were ready to show these primitives the price of resistance. Captain Han watched the enemy ships descend on his monitors. He was calm. Everything was going according to plan. When the ships reached the right altitude, he gave the command. "Fire the grid." In orbit around Earth, thousands of small satellites activated. They had been launched over the past 5 years, disguised as communication satellites and weather monitors. But they were weapons. Simple weapons that used physics instead of explosives. Each satellite fired a single tungsten rod, no bigger than a telephone pole. The rods had no engines, no guidance systems, no explosives. They were just metal falling toward Earth, pulled by gravity and accelerated by the planet's rotation. But they fell at tremendous speed. When they hit the ships, the impact was devastating. The tungsten rods punched through hull armor like bullets through paper. They tore through multiple decks, destroying systems and killing everyone in their path. The pilots tried to evade, but there were too many rods falling from too many directions. 27 ships were destroyed before they understood what was happening. Metal and bodies rained down into the oceans and empty deserts. The remaining ships scattered, their formation broken. They had come to deliver destruction. Instead, they found themselves fighting just to survive. Dr. Park watched the results on her screen. She felt no joy at the deaths, but she felt satisfaction. The weapon had worked exactly as designed. Simple physics, mass and velocity, no expensive explosives, no complicated technology, just heavy metal falling from space. Kinetic bombardment, she explained to a young technician beside her. We dropped rocks on them, very fast rocks. Commander stared at his losses with growing horror. In less than an hour, he had lost over 40 ships. 40 ships, against primitives who supposedly had no real weapons. Pull back, he ordered. All ships retreat to high orbit now. The surviving ships fled upward, escaping Earth's atmosphere and the killing field of falling metal. Needed time to think, time to understand what was happening. Approached him carefully. Commander, we have severely underestimated these humans. Clearly, said through clenched teeth. But they are still primitives. They use tricks, traps. They cannot stand against us in real combat. What are your orders? Studied the planet below. The humans wanted to hide. Fine, he would burn them out. Begin orbital bombardment, plasma weapons, target their cities. If they want to hide underground, we will collapse the ground on top of them. The fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts rained down from orbit, superheated energy that turned buildings to ash and melted stone. Cities burned. The sky turned orange with fire. Millions of humans died in the first hours, caught in the inferno or crushed under falling structures. But the critical facilities held. The bunkers deep underground stayed intact. The weapons factories hidden in mountains continued operating. Humanity had spent years preparing for exactly this. They had reinforced. They had dug deeper. They had moved everything important below where the enemy could not reach. On the surface, Major led his soldiers through the burning ruins of what had once been a great city. The heat was intense even through their protective suits. Bodies lay everywhere, but did not let his soldiers stop. They had a mission. Keep moving, he ordered. We need to reach the supply depot before they land more troops. His soldiers followed without question. They were the best humanity had. They had trained for years for this moment. They moved like shadows through the smoke and fire, invisible to the enemy ships above. A transport ship landed 2 kilometers away, deploying a battalion of warriors. Watched through his binoculars. The enemy soldiers moved in formation, confident and organized. They expected to find terrified humans hiding in the rubble. They would not find that. Split into teams, commanded. Hit and run, kill them and disappear. Show them that this is our world and we know every corner of it. The human soldiers vanished into the ruins. The warriors entered the destroyed city, searching for survivors to eliminate. They found something else instead. Explosions erupted from hidden positions. Warriors fell, shot by invisible enemies. When they turned to return fire, the humans were already gone, moved to new positions. They tried to use their superior armor and weapons, but it meant nothing when they could not find their targets. Corporal fired her rifle from a collapsed building, killing 2 warriors before rolling backward and escaping through a hole in the floor. She had been a teacher before the war. Now she was a killer. She felt nothing but cold determination. The battle raged through the night. They had better weapons and better armor, but the humans had anger and desperation and intimate knowledge of their own terrain. By dawn, the battalion had lost half its forces and retreated to their ship. In orbit, Commander received the reports. Ground forces taking heavy casualties. Orbital bombardment effective but enemy still fighting. No signs of surrender. No signs of breaking. "Request reinforcements from the Council," he ordered. "We need more ships, more warriors. These primitives are more dangerous than anticipated." Sent the message. 3 days later, the response came back. The Council was sending 500 more ships, 100,000 more warriors, the largest fleet ever assembled for a single primitive world. Earth was classified as a moderate resistance threat. The Council expected it to fall within a month. Colonel stood in his command center and read the intelligence reports about the incoming enemy fleet. His officers looked worried. 500 ships. It seemed impossible. But smiled grimly. "Every day they spend here, we learn more about them. Every ship they send, we study. Dr. Park, have you analyzed the captured technology?" Nodded. "Yes, I found something interesting. Their ships use a central computer system to coordinate. It makes them efficient, but it also creates a vulnerability." "What kind of vulnerability?" "The kind we can exploit," said. "Give me 2 more weeks. I will give you a weapon that can turn their advantage into their destruction." Looked at his exhausted staff, at the screens showing their burning world, at the death count that climbed every hour. Then he looked back at. "You have your 2 weeks," he said. "Make it count." The reinforcement fleet arrived like a wave of darkness. 500 warships joined the 300 already in orbit. Commander now commanded the largest invasion force in recent history. He stood on his command deck and felt his confidence return. These primitives had been lucky. They had used tricks and traps, but with 800 ships there would be no more surprises. "Begin systematic bombardment," ordered. "Every city, every town, every structure large enough to hide a warrior, burn it all." The fleet spread across Earth's orbit and opened fire. Plasma bolts fell like rain. Cities that had survived the first attacks were now destroyed. Forests burned. Mountains were by superheated energy. The sky was filled with smoke and ash. Millions more humans died. The casualties climbed into the tens of millions. But still, humanity did not surrender. Deep underground, Colonel walked through corridors carved from solid rock. The bunker complex stretched for kilometers in every direction. Thousands of people lived here now. Soldiers, scientists, civilians, children. They had everything they needed to survive for years. Power generators, water recyclers, food grown in underground farms. This was where humanity would wait out the storm. "Colonel, the Western Command Center was hit," an officer reported. "We lost contact with 15 surface teams." Nodded grimly. "They lost people every day, every hour, but they kept fighting. What is the status of Dr. Park's project?" "She says she needs 3 more days." 3 more days. Did not know if they had 3 more days, but they had no choice except to hold on and hope. On the surface, Major and his soldiers had become ghosts. They lived in the ruins. They moved at night. They attacked supply lines and landed ships. They killed stragglers and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. They called them shadows. The humans called themselves survivors. Crouched in the remains of a building, watching a supply convoy move through what had once been a highway. 12 vehicles, 50 warriors. They thought they were safe this far from the main human resistance. "Team 1, take the lead vehicle," whispered into his radio. "Team 2, the rear. Team 3, prepare the trap." His soldiers moved into position silently. They had learned that sensors could detect energy weapons and explosives, so they used simpler tools: sharpened metal, compressed air guns, even rocks dropped from high places, primitive weapons that the advanced scanners ignored. The convoy entered the kill zone, gave the signal. The lead vehicle exploded as heavy stones, dropped from a damaged overpass, crushed its roof. The rear vehicle was hit by armor-piercing rounds fired from compressed air rifles, puncturing its fuel cells. The convoy stopped, confused. Then soldiers attacked from every side. They fired from windows, from sewers, from piles of rubble. The warriors tried to respond, but they could not find targets. By the time they organized a defense, 20 of them were dead and the rest were fleeing on foot. Let them run. Let them tell their commanders what happened. Let them spread fear. This was not glorious war. This was survival, and humans had survived worse. In another part of the world, Lieutenant Bora worked in an underwater facility that monitored the oceans. They had not found this place yet. From here, she tracked every enemy ship that came close to the water. Some of them landed on islands or coastal areas. Those ships rarely left. Bora had teams of divers and submarine operators. They would approach landed ships at night, plant explosives, and vanish before dawn. They never understood how their ships kept exploding. They blamed technical failures. They never suspected humans swimming beneath the waves. Commander grew more frustrated each day. His fleet bombarded the planet constantly. His warriors patrolled the surface. But the humans kept fighting. They kept killing his soldiers. They kept destroying his supplies. It was like fighting smoke. Every time he tried to grasp it, it slipped away. "This is not warfare," he told. "This is terrorism. These primitives refuse to face us honorably." "Perhaps they understand that honor means nothing to a dead species," replied quietly. "They fight to survive by any means necessary." Glared at his second. "You admire them." "No, Commander, but I respect their determination. They know they cannot win, yet they fight anyway." "Then we will break that determination. I want prisoners, live prisoners. We will interrogate them and find their command centers." They began capturing humans wherever they could. Most humans killed themselves before capture, but some were taken alive. Had them brought to his ship for questioning. One prisoner was Corporal. She had been caught when her position was overrun. Her team had died covering her escape, but she did not make it out. Now she sat in an interrogation room, hands bound, facing Commander himself. "Where is your command center?" demanded. Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "Which one?" "Do not play games with me, human. I can make you talk. We have ways." "I am sure you do," said calmly. "But it does not matter what I tell you. You came to our world. You burned our cities. You killed our families. Did you really think we would line up and let you? Your resistance is meaningless. We have 800 ships. You have nothing. We have our world, we have our anger, and we have time." Leaned forward. "You are so far from home, Commander. You are in our territory now. Every day you stay here, more of you die. How long before your council decides this planet costs too much?" Struck her across the face. "You will tell me what I want to know." Spit blood onto the floor. "I will tell you this. You have already lost. You just do not know it yet." She triggered the poison capsule hidden in her false tooth. It was fast-acting. She was dead in seconds, still smiling, her last act one of defiance. Stared at her body with rage and something else, something he had never felt before in conquest: doubt. In her laboratory deep below the surface, Dr. Park worked day and night. She had studied captured technology for months. She understood how their ships communicated, how their fleet coordination worked. It was elegant, sophisticated, and it had a fatal flaw. The fleet used a central artificial intelligence to coordinate all 800 ships. This made them incredibly efficient. They could execute complex maneuvers with perfect timing, but it also meant that every ship was connected to the same network. Had designed a virus, not a biological virus but a digital one. It was written specifically to attack systems. It would hide itself in their network, watching and learning. Then, at the right moment, it would strike. Lieutenant Lee was the best cyber warfare operator humanity had. He was young, barely 25, but he understood computer systems better than anyone had ever met. He would be the one to deliver the virus. "How long will it take to spread through their fleet?" asked, studying the code on his screen. "Once it is in their system, about 6 hours," replied. "It will copy itself to every connected ship. By the time they realize what is happening, it will be too late." And the delivery method. We have a captured communication relay. You will hack into it and upload the virus. It will think the virus is a normal system update. Smiled, it was a predator's smile. When do we start? Tonight. That night, Lee sat in a dark room surrounded by computers. He connected to the captured relay through cables, avoiding any wireless signals that might be detected. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Breaking through security was like solving a puzzle. A difficult puzzle, but had been solving puzzles his entire life. After 4 hours, he was in. The virus uploaded smoothly, disguised as routine fleet maintenance data. The systems accepted it without question. "It is done," reported to Colonel. "The virus is in their network." Felt hope for the first time in weeks. How long before we can activate it? Dr. Park says we should wait until they launch their next major attack. Hit them when they are committed and cannot retreat quickly. Nodded. Then we wait, but start preparing our surface forces. When their fleet falls into chaos, we will strike hard. Across the world, human soldiers received the message. Major gathered his teams and began planning. They had been on defense for weeks. Now they would attack. They cleaned their weapons. They checked their salvaged armor. They said quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in. Lieutenant Bora brought her submarines to the surface, preparing them for open assault. Captain Han coordinated the last of Earth's missile defenses, saving everything for one massive strike. Commander stood in his command center and studied the planet below. Weeks of bombardment had turned Earth's surface into a wasteland, but still, the humans fought. He was tired. His warriors were tired. The council was asking questions about why the conquest was taking so long. It was time to end this. "Prepare for final assault," ordered. "Every ship, every warrior. We will land simultaneously on all continents. We will sweep the planet clean. No mercy, no prisoners, total extermination." Hesitated. "Commander, such an attack will leave us vulnerable if something goes wrong." "Nothing will go wrong," snapped. "These primitives are beaten. They are hiding in holes. We will dig them out and end this war." The order went out to all 800 ships. Every warrior prepared for battle. The largest assault in the entire campaign. The final attack that would break humanity forever. On Earth, deep underground, Colonel watched the enemy fleet move into position. Every ship was committed. Every warrior was preparing to descend. It was exactly what they had been waiting for. "Dr. Park," he said quietly, "activate the virus." Park pressed a single button on her console. In orbit in the central computer system of Commander's flagship, a string of code came alive. It spread. It began to hunt. The fleet began its descent into Earth's atmosphere. 800 warships moving as one, a mechanical ballet coordinated by their central computer system. Commander watched the displays with satisfaction. This was overwhelming force. This was the way, total victory through absolute power. "All ships report ready," announced. "Ground assault teams prepared. Bombardment support standing by." "Execute the attack," commanded. The ships dropped through the clouds like falling stars, target coordinates locked, weapons armed, troop transports ready to land. It was perfect. It was unstoppable. Then everything went wrong. The virus that Dr. Park had designed activated across the entire fleet simultaneously. It had spent days watching, learning, copying itself to every connected system. Now it struck like a digital plague. Targeting computers began showing false information. Weapons systems locked onto the wrong targets. Navigation identified friendly ships as enemies. Propulsion controls responded to commands with random outputs. And the collision avoidance systems, the critical safety feature that prevented ships from crashing into each other, simply shut down. On command deck, alarms screamed. Displays flashed red. Officers shouted in confusion. "Commander, weapons are firing without authorization." Navigation is not responding. Multiple ships reporting system failures. Stared at the chaos in disbelief. What is happening? The answer came in fire and death. A destroyer, its targeting system corrupted, fired its main cannon at the ship beside it. The blast tore through armor and detonated the fuel reserves. Both ships exploded, debris spreading in every direction. More ships opened fire, their computers convinced they were under attack from their own fleet. Plasma bolts crossed the sky in random patterns. Some ships tried to evade, but their navigation systems sent them directly into other vessels. Metal screamed as hulls collided. Explosions lit up the atmosphere. In the upper atmosphere, 200 ships died in the first 10 minutes, not from enemy fire, but from their own confusion and malfunction. The perfect coordination that had been their strength became their weakness. The central computer system that had made them efficient now spread the virus to every connected ship. Worked desperately at his console, trying to isolate systems and regain control. "Commander, the network is compromised. We need to shut down all connections." "Do it," ordered. But shutting down the network meant every ship would be on its own. No coordination. No shared information. The fleet fell into chaos as captains tried to regain control of their individual vessels while avoiding collisions with other ships doing the same thing. On the ground, Colonel watched the enemy fleet tear itself apart. The virus had worked even better than hoped. All units, execute attack plan now. Across Earth, human forces emerged from hiding. They had waited weeks for this moment. Now they struck with everything they had saved. Major led 5,000 soldiers out of the ruins. They wore salvaged armor and carried captured weapons. Months of studying, the enemy had taught them how to use this equipment. They moved in formation toward the nearest landed position, a forward base with 300 warriors. The warriors were in disarray. Their communications were down. Their orbital support was gone. They saw armored figures approaching and assumed it was reinforcements. By the time they realized their mistake, forces were already among them. The battle was close and vicious. Humans fought hand to hand in the rubble of a dead city. They were stronger individually, but the humans fought with desperate fury. Sergeant I.M., a former police officer from a city that no longer existed, killed 3 warriors with a captured plasma rifle before the weapon overheated. When it failed, she drew a knife and kept fighting. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Humans who had nothing left to lose threw themselves at the enemy with suicidal courage. Warriors, trained for glory and conquest, found themselves fighting an enemy that cared nothing for glory, only for revenge. The base fell after 2 hours of fighting, stood among the bodies breathing hard. Half his soldiers were dead, but the base was theirs. And more importantly, 3 ships sat on the landing pad, intact and abandoned. "We have ships," reported over the radio. "Can you fly them?" Lieutenant Lee, who had infiltrated the base with a small technical team, examined the nearest ship. "Give me an hour. I can reprogram the controls." While worked, the battle raged across the planet. Lieutenant Bora brought her submarines to the surface near a cluster of ships that had crashed into the ocean. Some were still functional, their crews trying to evacuate. Bora's forces attacked with torpedoes and missiles. Ships that survived the crashes sank under human weapons. Captain Han coordinated Earth's remaining missile batteries. They had saved their ammunition for this moment. Now they fired everything at once. Thousands of missiles streaked into the sky, targeting the ships still in orbit. The ships, already crippled by the virus, could not defend effectively. More explosions lit up the heavens. In orbit, Commander tried to rally his fleet. Over half his ships were destroyed or crippled. The rest were scattered and uncoordinated. His ground forces were being slaughtered by primitives wearing stolen armor, and the virus continued to spread, infecting every system they tried to restart. "Status report," demanded. "We have isolated our ship's systems from the network. replied. "But that leaves us blind to fleet positions. Our sensors are unreliable, and we have multiple hull breaches from debris impacts." Made the hardest decision of his life. "Order all functional ships to retreat to high orbit. We need to regroup." "Commander, we have ground forces still on the surface." "I know," roared, "but if we stay, we lose everything. Pull back now." The order went out to every ship that could still receive it. Retreat. Abandon the surface forces. Save what remains of the fleet. It was the first retreat in Commander's career. The shame burned like acid. The ships that could still fly began pulling away from Earth, but the humans were not finished. The captured ships that Lieutenant Lee had lifted off, piloted by human volunteers. These were not warships. They were transports and supply vessels, but they had weapons and the humans knew how to use them. Captain Nam sat in the pilot seat of one captured ship. He had been a civilian pilot before the war. His family had died in the first bombardment. Now he flew a transport loaded with every explosive his team could pack into the cargo bay. "This is," he said over the radio, "intercepting enemy dreadnought." "That ship's weapons will destroy you," Colonel replied from his command center. "I know, sir," smiled. He thought of his wife, his children, for Earth. He cut communication and accelerated toward the massive dreadnought. The enemy ship's defensive weapons fired, damaging his engines and tearing away pieces of hull, but kept flying, kept pushing forward. The dreadnought grew larger in his viewport. He thought of his daughter's laugh, his son's smile, his wife's hand in his. "For Earth," he whispered again, and triggered the detonation. The explosion was visible from the surface. The dreadnought broke in half, debris spreading across orbit. 5 more human pilots followed his example, sacrificing themselves to destroy enemy ships. The fleet, already crippled, lost 6 more capital ships to suicide attacks. Commander watched his fleet disintegrate around him. 200 ships remained functional. 200 out of 800. The greatest military disaster in history. "Commander, we cannot hold orbit," reported. "We need to retreat beyond the debris field." "How many ground forces did we evacuate?" Hesitated. "Less than 10,000. The rest are stranded on the surface." 40,000 warriors, left behind, abandoned to their fate, felt something he had never experienced before, not just defeat, horror at what they had walked into. "Prepare the fleet for emergency jump to friendly space," he ordered quietly. "Plot multiple jump points to avoid tracking." "Sir, what about the stranded forces?" "They are dead already. They just do not know it yet." On Earth's surface, the abandoned warriors realized they had been left behind. Some tried to signal their fleet. Some tried to form defensive positions. But they were surrounded, cut off from supplies, and facing an enemy that wanted them dead more than anything in the universe. Major led the hunt. His forces, reinforced by captured weapons and armor, moved through the ruins systematically. They found warriors hiding in buildings, trying to escape through tunnels, attempting to repair damaged ships. The humans showed no mercy. These invaders had burned their world, killed their families. Now they would pay. It took 3 days to eliminate all the stranded forces. 3 days of brutal fighting through the ashes of human civilization. When it ended, 40,000 warriors were dead. Not one survived. Colonel stood in his command center and watched the enemy fleet jump away to faster-than-light speeds. They were running. The great empire was running from humans. "Sir, should we pursue?" an officer asked. "With what ships?" replied. "We barely have anything that can leave orbit. No, we let them go, but we watch where they go." Dr. Park joined him, exhausted but alive. "We won," she said quietly. "We survived," corrected. "The war is not over. They will send more ships eventually, a larger fleet. We need to prepare." "Then we will prepare," said. "And next time we will not wait for them to come to us." Deep in space, Commander sat alone in his quarters. He had sent his report to the Galactic Council. 800 ships sent. 200 returned. Complete failure. Total disaster. The Council would want explanations. They would want to know how primitives defeated the finest warriors in the galaxy. But had no explanations. Only the knowledge that something had changed. The humans had been underestimated, dismissed as weak, but they had proven to be something else entirely. They were survivors, fighters, and they learned fast. Entered quietly. Commander, we are receiving signals from the other ships. They want to know what we will tell the Council. The truth, said, that we encountered a species unlike any we have faced before, a species that does not surrender, does not break, fights with intelligence and desperation in equal measure. Will they believe us? Probably not. They will send another fleet, larger, better prepared, looked at his second-in-command. And they will fail too, because the Council does not understand what we learned. What did we learn, Commander? That there are some species you should never challenge on their own world, some enemies that become more dangerous when cornered, stood and looked at the stars. We came to conquer a primitive species. We found something far worse. We found humanity. Commander believed his fleet had escaped. 200 damaged ships limping through space toward territory. They had jumped to faster-than-light speeds and left Earth behind. The primitives had no technology to follow them, no ships that could track them through the void. Was wrong. Years before they arrived, when humanity first detected the Empire, they had launched hundreds of small probes into deep space. Simple devices, no weapons, no shields, just cameras, sensors, and transmitters. They drifted through the galaxy like seeds on the wind, invisible to anyone not looking for them. When the fleet jumped away from Earth, those probes tracked them. Silent observers recording every movement, every course change, every heading. The data streamed back to Earth through encrypted quantum communications. In his command center, Colonel watched the fleeing fleet on his displays. They think they escaped, he said to Dr. Park. They think we cannot follow. Can we? Asked. Not yet, but we will, turned to his officers. Begin Phase 2, activate the pursuit fleet. The pursuit fleet was humanity's secret. While they had bombarded Earth's surface, human engineers had been working in hidden facilities deep underground and in asteroid bases far from the inner planets. They had studied captured ships, learned their technology, improved it. The human ships were not elegant, they were not beautiful. They were built from scavenged parts, stolen technology, and desperate innovation. But they worked, and they had one feature no ship possessed: human pilots who had nothing left to lose. 50 vessels, small compared to the fleet, but each one was special. Each one had been modified for a single purpose. These were not warships meant to fight and return home. They were weapons, guided missiles with human brains directing them. Captain Nam's sacrifice had inspired hundreds of volunteers, people who had lost everything, people who wanted revenge more than they wanted to live. Each ship had a pilot and a crew who understood they were not coming back. Lieutenant Bora commanded one of these ships. She had survived the underwater facility, survived the battles, survived when so many had not. Now she volunteered for this final mission. Her ship was built around a fusion reactor pushed far beyond safe limits. When the time came, it would explode with the force of a small star. All ships report ready, she transmitted to Colonel. We are prepared to launch. May you find peace, replied. There were tears in his eyes. He was sending people to their deaths, but they had volunteered, they had insisted, and humanity needed this to work. The pursuit fleet launched quietly, accelerating away from Earth toward the coordinates where the fleet was heading. They would take weeks to catch up, weeks alone in space, knowing they were chasing death. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the rebuilding began. Cities were ruins, millions were dead. The surface was burned, but humanity was alive, and they were angry. Major stood in what had once been his. Nothing remained except rubble and memories. His family had died here in the first attacks. He had found their bodies among the ashes. Now he commanded the construction of new defensive installations, bigger weapons, deeper bunkers. Earth would be ready for the next attack. "Sir, how long before they come back?" a young soldier asked him. "Months, maybe years," replied, "but they will come, and when they do, we will be ready." Dr. Park worked with teams of scientists, analyzing every piece of technology they had captured. They learned about the Empire's faster-than-light drives, their energy weapons, their armor, everything they had. Humanity would learn to build better. "We were lucky," told her team. "They underestimated us. The next fleet will not make that mistake. We need to advance our technology faster than they can respond." In space, the fleet traveled toward home. Commander spent his days writing reports and preparing for the trial he knew awaited him. The loss of 600 ships was unprecedented. Careers had been destroyed for less. Lives had been taken for smaller failures. Tried to comfort him. "You did everything correctly, Commander. The primitives used weapons and tactics we could not predict." "The Council will not care about excuses," replied bitterly. "They will care only about results, and our result was total failure." 3 weeks into their journey, the first ship exploded. No warning, no attack detected. One moment it was there, the next it was debris. Assumed it was a reactor failure from battle damage. The second explosion came an hour later, then a third, then 5 more. "All ships emergency defensive positions," ordered. "We are under attack." But sensors showed nothing. No enemy vessels, no incoming weapons, just empty space and death. The answer came when a lookout spotted something. A small ship, barely larger than a fighter, accelerating toward them at tremendous speed. It had no weapons firing, no missiles launching, just raw velocity aimed at one of the cruisers. "Shoot it down," commanded. The defensive weapons fired, but the small ship's pilot was skilled. It dodged, weaved, took hits that would have destroyed a normal vessel but kept flying. Then it rammed directly into the cruiser's reactor core. The explosion was massive. The cruiser and 2 nearby ships were caught in the blast, their hulls melting under the fusion fire. Lieutenant Bora died in that explosion. She died knowing she had succeeded. She died thinking of her team in the underwater facility. She died smiling. More human ships appeared on sensors. 50 small vessels, spreading through the fleet like wolves among sheep. They were suicide ships, and their pilots had been hunting the fleet for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Commander watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart by an enemy that should not exist. "How are they here? How did they follow us?" "Unknown, Commander," shouted over the alarms. "They must have tracking technology we did not detect." The human pilots were relentless. They did not fight to win. They fought to kill as many as possible before dying. Some rammed ships directly. Others detonated their reactors in the middle of formations. A few even boarded damaged vessels and triggered explosions from within. Captain Han piloted one of the suicide ships. He had lost his family, his home, his entire world. Now he flew toward a dreadnought with a hold full of antimatter charges. The defensive fire was intense but had been a pilot for 20 years. He knew how to fly through chaos. "This is for everyone you killed," he whispered, and triggered the detonation while still approaching. The antimatter explosion was blinding. The dreadnought and 4 escort ships vanished in the blast. His last thought was of his daughter, and he hoped she would have a better world to grow up in. The attacks continued for hours. By the time the last human ship had exploded or been destroyed, the fleet had lost another 70 vessels. Only 130 ships remained from the original 800, less than 1 in 6. Commander sat in his damaged command chair and stared at nothing. His fleet was destroyed. His career was over, and the primitives had done it with just 50 ships and 50 crews willing to die. "Commander, we are approaching space," reported quietly. "We should signal ahead." Signal what? Asked bitterly. That we were defeated by a primitive species, that our greatest fleet was destroyed by creatures who fight with suicide and rage. But he sent the signal anyway. The Galactic Council needed to know. The Empire needed to understand what they had encountered. On Earth, Colonel received confirmation that the pursuit fleet had succeeded. 50 ships, 50 crews, all dead, but they had taken 70 vessels with them. The exchange rate was more than worth it. Signal all human forces, ordered. The enemy fleet has been decimated. Only a fraction survived. We have bought ourselves time. Dr. Park stood beside him. Time for what? Time to build, time to prepare, time to become what we need to be. Looked at the star map on his display. The Empire controls thousands of worlds. They will send another fleet, a bigger one, but it will take them time to organize after this disaster. What do you propose? We do not wait for them to come to us again, said. We take the fight to them. We build ships, real warships. We develop weapons they cannot defend against, and we make them understand that humanity is not prey. Major joined the conversation via video link. Colonel, are you suggesting we attack the Empire directly? Not immediately, replied. We are not ready for that, but we prepare for it. We build our fleet. We train our soldiers, and when the next fleet arrives, we do not just defend Earth. We destroy them completely. We capture their ships. We learn their technology, and we use it to free every species they have enslaved. It was an impossible dream, an insane ambition, but humanity had just done the impossible. They had defeated an empire that had never been defeated. Across the galaxy, the remaining fleet limped home. When they arrived at the capital world, the Galactic Council was waiting. Commander and his officers were brought before them to explain their failure. You led 800 ships against primitives, the council leader said coldly. You return with less than 130. Explain. Stood tall despite his shame. The humans are not primitives. They are a warrior species unlike any we have encountered. They fight without honor, without mercy. They use tactics that defy our understanding of warfare. Excuses, another council member spat. You were incompetent. Then send another fleet, challenged. Send 2,000 ships, send 10,000, it will not matter. The humans will adapt. They will learn, they will find a way to kill you, because that is what they do. They survive, and they remember. The council fell silent. Finally, the council leader spoke. What do you recommend? Leave them alone, said quietly. Mark their space as forbidden. Never go near their system again. Because if we do, if we give them a reason to build a fleet and come after us, they will not stop until our empire is ashes. Cowardice, someone accused. Wisdom, replied. I learned it at great cost. The question is whether you will listen. The council debated for days. Some wanted to send a massive fleet to obliterate Earth completely. Others argued it was not worth the resources. Eventually, they reached a decision. Earth would be classified as an extreme threat. No vessel would approach their system. The humans would be left alone. It was not mercy, it was fear. Back on Earth, humanity did not know about the Council's decision. They only knew that the enemy had not returned. Yet. Colonel stood at the memorial wall where millions of names were carved. The dead of humanity. His wife's name was there. His son's. So many others. We will remember, he said softly. We will remember what they did to us, and we will be ready. Behind him, the sky was filled with construction. Orbital shipyards building new vessels. Defense platforms rising from the ground. Humanity was preparing for the next war. Dr. Park joined him at the memorial. The first new warship will launch next month. We have named it the Defiance. Good name, replied. How many more can we build? With current resources, 12 ships per year, we are expanding production. In 5 years, we will have a fleet of 100 vessels. Will it be enough? It will have to be. And Colonel, I have analyzed the technology thoroughly. I think I can improve their faster-than-light drives, make them more efficient. We could reach other star systems in months instead of years. Looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire continued its conquests. Somewhere out there, species were being enslaved and destroyed. And now, somewhere out there, humanity was watching. Build the drives, ordered. Build the ships, train the crews. Humanity has a debt to pay, and we always pay our debts. Years later, when historians studied the Great War with humanity, they would mark the battle at Earth as the turning point of their empire. They did not understand it at the time. They thought it was just one loss among many victories. But they were wrong. The Empire had sent its finest warriors to conquer a primitive world. 800 ships, 100,000 soldiers, the greatest invasion force ever assembled for a single species. None came home to tell the tale of victory. Only survivors returned with stories of horror, stories of a species that refused to die, a species that learned from every battle, a species that turned their own weapons against them. They sent their finest warriors to Earth. They encountered humanity, and they learned that some species should never be challenged, some enemies should never be awakened, some wars should never be started. Because humanity does not forget, humanity does not forgive, and humanity never stops fighting. The war had ended with a retreat, but for humanity, the war was just beginning. The galaxy would learn soon enough what it meant to provoke a species of survivors. They had sent their finest warriors to Earth. None came home, and in the silence that followed, something new was born, not peace, not victory, but a promise. Humanity would remember, humanity would prepare, and when humanity came to the stars, the galaxy would tremble. The end of one war, the beginning of another, and this time humanity would not wait to be attacked. This time humanity would hunt.